Hello, hi. Today we start our physics course, and in order to do so we need to a quick review about the mathematical tools we need for this course. The main tool is vectors, and we need a little introduction before the vectors, the right triangle. So let's do it. This is a right triangle. It has a 90 degrees in it. The side opposite the 90 degrees is called hypotenuse. We just write hip. We choose an angle, let's say this angle, we call it alpha. The side opposite the alpha is called opposite, or we just call it op. And the side next to the alpha, beside the alpha, which is not the hypotenuse, we call adjacent. We just write adj. We need to know three main things. The first, sine alpha is always equal to the opposite side, op, divided by the hypotenuse, hip. The cosine alpha equals to the adjacent side, adj, over, divided by the hypotenuse, hip. And the tangent alpha equals to the opposite side, op, over the adjacent side, adj. We'll practice them in a minute. The fourth thing we need to do to learn, which you probably know, is the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. C is always the hypotenuse. Okay, let's do a little exercises to demonstrate all of this, and after that we can go and learn our vectors. Okay, example number 1. Suppose I have this right triangle. This is 8, this is 10, this is this is x, this is 40, and I want the x. So how do I calculate it? I say to myself, I have this angle, I have the opposite side, and I want the opposite side, and I have the hypotenuse. Opposite, hypotenuse, op, hip. Op, hip. Who corresponds with these two words, op and hip? Sine. So I write sine 40 equals to opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite is x over hypotenuse 10. Then we multiply by 10. This is 10. This is 1. 10 sine 40 equals x. So x equals, we go to the calculator, and we press 10 multiplied by sine 40 equals to 6.427. If we want, we can round it up to 6.43. It's all the same, it doesn't really matter. One more thing we need to know about the calculator. Look at the top of the screen, you see the letter D. Maybe some of you have the letter R. R is for radians, this is for degrees. We work in degrees. So what you do, if you are accidentally see this letter R, you go to shift mode or just mode and find the degrees, DEG, degrees, degrees, and you press it, and you make sure the letter D is on the top of the screen. So you know the calculator works with degrees and not with radians. Okay, let's continue. This was our first example. 2. Let's do this triangle. Suppose I have this x, this 10, this 30, and I want the x. Again, we speak to ourselves. What do we say? I want the hypotenuse. I have the adjacent. Adj, hip, which correspond with this. Adj, hip, cosine. So, cosine 30 equals to adj over hip. Adj is 10 over hypotenuse, x. And we solve it. We multiply by x, this is 1. X times cosinus 30 equals 10. We divide it by cosine 30. X equals to 10 over cosine 30. Again, we go to the calculator and we press 10 divided by cosine 30. You should get 11.547 or 55 if you want to round it up. 3. Let's turn the right triangle like this. Suppose this is 65 degrees, this is x, this is 7, I want the x. Okay, again, I want the opposite side, opposite. I have the adjacent, op, adj, who corresponds with op and adj? Tangent. So, tangent 65 equals to op over adj. Op is x over adj 7. We multiply by 7. 7 tangent 65 equals to x. And again, we go to the calculator. We write 7 times tangent 65. 15.01. Okay, let's continue. Next, 4. Okay, suppose I have this triangle. Let's say this is 8, this is 17, this is alpha. Now I want the alpha. I want the angle. I do exactly the same. I have the opposite side and the hypotenuse. Opposite, hypotenuse. Up, hip, Who corresponds with up and hip? Sine. So sine alpha equals to up over hip. In order to find the alpha, we go to the calculator and press like this. We press the shift button, sine 8 over 17 equals. This is what we do in the calculator. We go to the calculator and we press shift sine 8 divided by 17. Shift sine. If you do it correctly, you should get 28.07 degrees. Okay? Make sure you get it. Another example, 5. Let's do like this. Let's say this is alpha, this is 10, and this is 7. I want the alpha. Let's talk to ourselves again. I have the adjacent side and I have the hypotenuse. Adj, hip. Who corresponds with adj and hip? The cosine. So cosine alpha equals to adj over hip. Adj over hip. I want the alpha. So again, when I want the angle, I want the alpha, I do shift cosine 7 over 10 in the calculator. You should get 45.57 degrees. One more. 6. Okay, let's turn it like this. Suppose this is alpha, this is 7, this is 5. I want the alpha. This is the right triangle, 90 degrees. I have the opposite side, I have the adjacent side, op, edge, who corresponds with op and edge, tangent. Tangent alpha equals to opposite over adjacent. And in the calculator, we do shift tangent 5 divided by 7. You should get 35.537 degrees. Okay. We saw these functions when we have the angle and when we want the angle. Let's do a little from this Pythagorean theorem, and then we'll mix them up and see if we'll do a summary of what we did. Okay, so when we're 7, suppose I have this triangle, this is 10, this is 8, this is x. I want the x. I don't need these, I can use the Pythagorean theorem. How? X squared plus 8 squared equals 10 squared. This is always the hypotenuse. And we solve it. X squared plus 64 equals 100. X squared equals 36. Square root x equals 6. Another example. We are 8. Let's say this is x, this is 7, this is 4. I want the x. So again, with the Pythagorean theorem, we say 7 squared plus 4 squared equals to x squared. This is always the hypotenuse. Okay, we go to the calculator, we do 7 squared, which is 49, plus 4 squared, which is 16. It's 65 equals to x squared. Square root, x equals to 8.06. Okay, so we did this Pythagorean theorem also. What we are left now to do is to mix them up, see that we can do an exercise, both finding an angle and then we use this, or first we use this, then this. Let's try. So we are 9. Suppose I have this triangle. This is 5, 7, this is 5, maybe a little 6, this is x, this is alpha. I want both x and alpha. Let's start with the x. X we can use the Pythagorean theorem to find it. 7 squared plus 6 squared equals x squared. Okay, let's solve it. This is 49 plus 36, 85 equals to x squared, square root. Square root of 85 is 9.2195. Let's round it up a little bit. Let's say 9.22. Okay? 9.22. Now I want the alpha. Alpha, I have all the sides, so it doesn't matter which one we use, we'll get the same answer. Let's do it 2 ways. First way, let's use the sign. Okay? Let's try it with the sign. If we use the sign alpha, then we need to write opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite is 6, over hypotenuse is 9.22. I remind you, when we want the alpha, we do shift sign. Shift sign, 6 over 9.22. It's about 40.6 degrees. 40.598. Let's try it another way. Let's try it with a cosine. What happened if we say cosine alpha? If we write cosine alpha. Cosine alpha, it's the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Adjacent is 7 over hypotenuse 9.22. Again, we do shift cosine 7 over 9.22. 40.6. Exactly the same. Okay, let's do another final exercise, and after that we can start working on vectors. Okay, so let's treat it with a new color. 10. Okay, let's do this one like that. Suppose this is the 90 degrees. This is x. This is 30. This is 8. And this is y. I want both x and y. Okay. Let's start with the x. I have this angle. I can't use this Pythagorean theorem because I don't have two sides. I only have one, so it won't help me. But I can use one of these. Let's see which. I have this angle. I want the opposite side, and I have the adjacent side. This is the hypotenuse. I want the opposite, I have the adjacent. Op, edge. Op, edge. Who corresponds with op and edge? Tangent. Tangent 30 equals to op over edge. Let's find the x. 8 times tangent 30 equals to x, so x equals to, we go to the calculator, now without the shift, because I have the angle, 8 times tangent 30, 4.618, let's say 62. 4.62. Now I want the y. The y I can do in many ways. Not so many, but many ways. I can use the Pythagorean theorem, because I have two sides. I can use one of these maybe. Let's do it two ways. First way, let's use the Pythagorean theorem. So, 4.62 squared plus 8 squared equals to y squared. This one plus this one equal always, this one is the hypotenuse. Okay, let's go to the calculator and find out. 4.62 squared plus 8 squared. It's 85.344 equals to y squared. Let's do square root. Y equals to 9.238. So let's write to 4. Let's try another way. Suppose I want the y and I want to use the 8. So, and this angle, I want to use one of these. So, I want the hypotenuse and I have the adjacent. I can always use this also, I can also use this also, but I want this one. I have the adjacent and I want the hypotenuse. Edge, hip, edge, hip, edge, hip, cosine. Cosine 30 equals to edge over hip. Edge is 8. Hip is y. Let's see if we get the same result. This is y, this is 1. Y cosine 30 equals to 8. We want the y, so we divide it by cosine 30. Y equals to 8 over cosine 30. Y equals to 8 over cosine 30. Amazing. 9.24. This is the idea of working with the right triangle. You should memorize it and know it, because we're going to use it all over physics. We don't need paper to look all the time to remember. We have to memorize it. So please memorize them. Try doing the same exercises that we did now again. make sure you get the same results, and then we go to the next lesson to work with vectors. Thanks.